Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and it has been a very long time since this ferocious little vehicle was featured on this channel. 5 years since I last featured the Hetzer, which is still to this day a video that I released 8 years ago is one of the most popular ones on this channel, and one of my few videos that kind of went a little bit viral and ended up getting over 1 million views. And that was of course a Hetzer game where a player managed to go 1 versus 10. Well, today I'm not going to be going 1 versus 10. You are going to be in for some filthy old school seal clubbing. Now, if you're wondering why I'm playing the Hetzer, I'm playing the Hetzer because my audience get to vote for the kinds of vehicles that I'm going to play. I have my own dedicated tank poll website, and for some reason everybody wants to see the Hetzer. Well, I don't play it very often, usually about once every few months. I actually went and I took a look at the last time I played the Hetzer on my account, and I think it was during some kind of German tech tree showcase many months ago. So it's not the kind of tank which I get into a lot. Not that there's anything necessarily directly wrong about the Hetzer, but yeah, when you put somebody who's now I've played about 80,000 games of World of Tanks into a vehicle that has all of the statistics that you want to have to be able to pick apart puppies as quickly as possible, yeah, it just doesn't really feel all of that fair. And this is going to be one of those kind of games. Some good old-fashioned filthy seal clubbing. Seal clubbing isn't something that's so easy to do in World of Tanks these days. Not that I would really know all too much about it, but they do end up having some kind of account protection right now at low tiers, and that is that experienced players get matched up against experienced players as well. I don't think there's many players out there who will end up in games where they've just starting World of Tanks. Although there are still some horrible cases where it's clear that very new players are popping in and ending up in inexperienced players' games, and usually end up resulting in games like these. The Hetzer has 2 different guns which are competitive on the vehicle, a 75mm or the one that I prefer to use, the 105mm. Wargaming may have tried to ruin high explosive rounds, but they haven't really managed to ruin high explosive rounds on the Hetzer. And that's because 53mm of penetration is still pretty good when you're playing at tier 4, and if that doesn't work out, well, you can just load the gold. Your alpha damage drops down from 410 down to 350, but still, with 104mm of penetration, that is more than enough to go through the front of mostly every vehicle. And when a Hetzer can one-shot itself, if it manages to penetrate, of course, 50% of the time, yeah, when it gets into a matchup like this where it's not even having to play against any tier 5 tanks, you know that something special might be about to happen. Now in this kind of a situation, I decided to make my way down the valley because I thought that I could use that bush up there to be able to get some shots across. But this T-28 that's around the corner, located just about here, is in the most frustrating situation. You can see that I'm asking my artillery hopefully to be able to get rid of them as quickly as possible, because now I can't use the bush line because he's going to proxy spot me if I go too far forwards into the bush. Unfortunately, the first shot that I managed to put into the T-28 didn't quite penetrate, even though most of the whole of that tank's armor is very thin. It's pretty much a glass cannon, and I was hoping that I'd be able to finish it off in a single shot. Whoa, I was very happy about that. You'll see that I actually turned around and I found the artillery and I gave them a big thumbs up, because now they've got the T-28 away from this bush location. The artillery, who's called My Big Fat Object, great name, I have to admit, even if you are playing a tier 4 self-propelled gun, it gives me a thumbs up too. And then this allows me to try and find a position where I can penetrate the Sav and aim for the weak point, and boom, there we go. Guess I could have reloaded a high explosive anti-tank round there, but I felt like the HE round will suffice against a weak point like that. So Valentine AT at the back of the map is not actually using the derp gun. They're actually using the armor piercing gun, and they're loading gold from the get-go. And they probably should do as well, because the Hetzer actually has 60mm of well-angled armor. And that means that you can have about 100mm of effective armor protection on the front of this vehicle. This thing is just an absolute seal clubber's dream, front loaded. And thanks to equipment 2.0, it actually means that I think now you can use vents, a turbo and binoculars on this tank to really pump up the vehicle's main weakness, which is its view range, which is 260. This thing is as blind as a bat. As you can see, the commander doesn't really have very good vision ports on this vehicle, but when you're in close quarters combat, it doesn't really matter. And we get revenge, I believe, on the Valentine AT that shot us, one-shotting a tier 4. And oh dear, is this puppy going to go as well? That's a high roll as well. This tank has 410 average damage, and to be able to do 439 to the Panzer IIIJ there, that was pretty disgusting. And that's just where players don't have Sixth Sense, and not that many players have Sixth Sense at low tier. It's one of the only things that I think could actually be good about Crew 2.0, will be just giving everybody Sixth Sense. But realistically, Wargaming could easily just incorporate some kind of crew system where everybody just gets Sixth Sense by default, a lot like some... they could just change the way that it works on all the commanders and be able to do that even without Crew 2.0. Unfortunately, that's one of the worst things about the delay, is that when you drop down to low tiers and you just see players who just don't know that they're spotted in the game, just like that Panzer IIIJ, it's rather unfortunate for them. So I'm going to fire a shell here at this building, and so that will actually mean that now the P2640 isn't able to probably cross back through those bushes, unless maybe they get lucky in this scenario, as now the building's gone and we're going to be able to spot them. So I'm changing from a high explosive round to a heat round on this vehicle, and as I don't have the most experienced crew, you'll see that it actually still takes me quite a while to do. If I had intuition on this vehicle, I could probably switch out the round in a second or two, and if any of you are filthy Hetzer players, I thoroughly recommend getting your hands on intuition for your loader. Alright, so there's a Matilda making their way in. I can't believe that the P2640 is going to be coming in. And at the moment, we are against 7 enemy vehicles with 2 other tanks and a self-propelled gun on our team. But hopefully coming around the corner here, we'll be able to derp this Su-76M. But a disaster, the T-28 actually wasn't spotted, is using the correct gun, the 57mm on that tank, and manages to lock our tracks down. Luckily, we're tier 4, so we can use all 3 consumables, which means that we can still use a repair kit. Su-76 comes around the corner, and we actually low roll here, which kind of makes up for a little bit of the good luck that we had against the Panzer IIIJ. And we nearly catch them there around the corner, and thankfully we do, shutting them down. And this T-28 seems to want to come after us as well. So I just feel like in this situation, shall I go forward, shall I go backwards? This vehicle actually has 7 degrees of gun depression, which is quite nice. And I just decide, I've got some hit points to throw around, so let's tank that T-28 before the P-2640 is going to be behind me. Now we're up to 5 kills with the Valentine AT, aiming as long as we can, right through the gun shield, penetrating him and doing 168 damage as well. And we have now changed what was like, I think, a 3 versus 7 scenario, now being a 2 versus 4. And this PZSFL 4B has actually done a fantastic job. Hopefully that artillery isn't going to be catching me anytime soon. There's a Stug behind me. That's the worst possible time that I could be spotted. But actually, my Sixth Sense doesn't go off, which means that I'm not spotted. So hopefully I can aim for the P2640. And now we're in a 1 versus 4 scenario with 6 kills to our name. Make that 7 kills to our name. And now, with only 261 hit points left, we're going to have to get through 838 hit points on the enemy team to be able to take this one down. Quite cute that our team is also feeding us the information that we need, which is how many hit points the Matilda has, to know whether we can one-shot them. I go forwards expecting to be spotted. I don't actually get spotted, but now I will be. The Matilda clearly will be able to see me, gets his gun on target, penetrates my tank, but luckily the low alpha damage of the Matilda, I can take a hit like that, but he can't take a hit like I dealt to them. And now we're up to 8 kills. I told you this was going to be some filthy seal clubbing. And what I'm doing right now is I'm faking that I'm going down the center until I'm no longer spotted. Don't want to knock down those trees in case the artillery has eagle eyes and is aiming maybe at me there, and be able to tell the Stug that I'm actually planning on slinking back. And now I want to go after the Stug. In this situation, I've still got to be careful. The Stug has enough armor to be able to take a hit occasionally, and considering they're on full hit points, I probably think they've got about 400 hit points on the Stug. I didn't know exactly. And if I penetrate a high explosive anti-tank round, I'm only going to do 350 damage on average. And so that's not going to be enough to be able to one-shot the Stug. Whereas their armor-piercing gun is going to be more than enough if they're using the top gun on the Stug 3B to be able to go through me, and they'll be able to shut me down in a couple of shots. And so, in this kind of a situation, you've just got to use your gut instinct, but also one of the worst things that I could do right now is to be too passive. You want to make the most of your time. You want to try and create lines of fire on your opponent, and hopefully stop in bushes or stop in positions, activate your binoculars, and then possibly even a blind tank like this might still be able to spot. Oh, that's so unfortunate for me that again the Stug 3G is sitting in the valley, which will make it quite tricky for me to be able to get up into that bush and to be able to spot out. So I'm moving backwards and forwards to hopefully try and avoid the artillery. You'll notice that I was also remembering where the artillery's position was last known, and I was using that rock to be able to hopefully give me a little bit of extra cover from his position. Now I'm going to swing round and hopefully use this bush that you see just towards the center of your screen now to hopefully get a spot on this Stug 3B. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to turn this into a game of chance. I want to try and make it so that I can strategically take out the Stug. But considering I can't see them in this situation and with only 4 minutes left on the battle, sometimes you just got to take your chances and see if you can be able to clap your opponents. And so luckily, I'm able to get a shot right into the top of the Stug. I wish I was loading a high explosive round now, but I've got to try and engage this guy quickly once again before the artillery hits me, and that's 137 hit points. Luckily, the Stug probably couldn't quite figure out where to be able to penetrate this vehicle, or maybe even to just get a shot across the ridge line there. And unfortunately now, with the Panzer SFL 4B managing to do 137 to me, I am a one-shot, and I was nervous. 67 hit points, 9 seals clubbed to our name in a Hetzer. Hopefully now we can be able to find out where the Panzer SFL 4B is. And we remember that they were located in this position. I was thinking about spotting up there. In retrospect, I should have probably got my binoculars loaded, but luckily, even with a turret, it wasn't to be there. And luckily well, not luckily, but thankfully my team were also rooting for me as well. I hope they weren't viewers trying to seal club me, but I hope that they were maybe seals on my team that are usually getting clubbed, and that hopefully, instead of being clubbed by the enemy team, they got to see an experienced player playing an outrageously broken tier 4 tank still to this day, even with the HE changes, actually clubbing for them. I'm not going to pretend like I'm some kind of SEAL club police. Sometimes I like to try and justify when I actually have to play low tiers that I don't actually choose. When I'm just playing tanks randomly on my account, I barely will go below tier 8. Sometimes on my free-to-play account for tanks that I need to grind, I'll play tier 6, but mostly I'll just dance around in the tier 10 tanks. I play the high tiers where the challenge is. I play the high tiers where the actual reward is for if you manage to win when you're playing against those experienced players. This 10 kill game, you kind of brush it to the side, but nevertheless, I still wanted to feature it on YouTube because it's been far too long that the Hetzer hetzed on the battlefield, and if there's one thing we know, Hetzer's gonna hetz. So an ace tanker here for our 1,333 base experience, pretty much, 3 times what anyone else on our team was able to achieve with regards to experience, and we did about 3 times their damage as well. Look, it's filthy. It's a filthy high caliber. It's a filthy top gun. This isn't actually a pools medal because I believe that to gain a pools medal, the vehicles have to be above tier 4. And I mean, I even barely broke even, although when we take into account the amount that gets added to your reserve, probably just about. So all in all, the Hetzer, they can nerf the high explosive rounds. They can prevent it from using field mods. They can try and hamper it in other areas, like not being able to use directives. Gosh, can you imagine the kinds of players who use directives on their Hetzer? I don't really want to meet them. But still, one of the absolute classics of World of Tanks is still an absolute boss. If any of you want to get a little bit of old school action going, and maybe blow off a little bit of steam. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, I think I'm going to have to go and have a shower after featuring this filthy replay on this channel today. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And when I was at Tank Fest, I always ask people what kind of content they want to see more on my channel. But one of the things I also found out is that somebody found my channel from that Hetzer 1 versus 10 video all of those years ago. So I've never really asked the community this. How did you find my YouTube channel? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.